Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you had a great and very delightful lunch. Landmark is always a home when you're not at home, so welcome to Landmark. And welcome to this Baku Action Panel Week. In this section, dealing with addressing education challenges. We talk about climate. How can we get the climate through? We need to get to the people. And what better way than to start with children, with educating people down the street. And having said that, I'll give first the floor to Robin, in which, according to what we had in the report. And rather interesting, Robin has quite a diverse career. He has studies in biochemistry, which is not quite often that I read something like that. Nutrition and medical research as well. Very importantly, he has had 29 years of previous experience in the pharmaceutical industry in practice. Then he came into advice of biosciences policies. Finally, he got to the European Academy Science Advisory Council. And very interesting, he dealt with antimicrobial things and things I don't see, but I feel to understand sometimes. Having said that, he also had over 200 peer-reviewed articles, so he's a well-known author. And with that, please, Robin, he's going to talk us, as understood correctly, about health and the global network challenge and climate, how to deal with it, and therefore, more particularly, trying to find solutions. We talk about the problems, but we need to find a way out. Robin?
Okay. Well, good afternoon all. Thank you for the invitation. I'm Robin Fields from the UK. As moderator mentioned, my focus is on health and the issues for health and climate with regard to education. And I will draw, in doing that, I will draw on some recent work from the Inter-Academy Partnership, which many of you may not be familiar with. This is a global network of more than 150 academies in science, engineering and medicine, which I'm very pleased to say that the Academy of Azerbaijan is a very recent member of IAP. And IAP organised itself on the basis of regional academy network in Asia, with Azerbaijan, Africa, Europe and the Americas. And obviously it started to represent academies of science. IAP does a lot of work covering higher education, but it also has significant interests in primary and secondary education. This is one example from an IAP ongoing collaboration with the Smithsonian, developing curriculum modules for primary and secondary schools in support of the multiple sustainable development goals. And we heard something about the SDGs earlier this morning. And I picked out some titles there relevant to our theme today, the green economy. And from the next slide onwards, I will focus on health. But certainly IAP has broad interest relevant to the green economy and education. We recently completed an inter-regional project organised by the Academy for Academy Networks, Asia, Africa, Europe and the Americas. And all the materials are available on our website, and I won't go into detail at the time, but essentially I highlight here several of the key conclusions from this large project with regard to education. Well, obviously education in schools is important, and other speakers will talk about that. Also, I will focus in a minute on education for health professionals. That includes actually modernising the curriculum for trainee doctors in many, if not all countries, maybe introducing new specialities such as environmental medicine, public education, which I will come back to in a minute, and occupational health education, whether in terms of advising farmers to stay out of the heat if that were possible, and implications for other workers. Clearly, all countries need to focus on these issues, but the problem arguably is worse in the lower middle income countries because they're affected worse by climate change adverse events on health, and secondly, because of a resource issue. I will spend a couple of minutes on a very recent project, which is a collaboration between IAP and the global NGO Save the Children. As you might anticipate, we focus there to a significant extent on children, but also other vulnerable groups who again are most at risk of climate change. Covering a broad number of themes for energy production, urbanisation, food systems and agriculture that I know many of you are interested in, and health systems strengthening themselves, and focusing on a number of marginalised groups, such as children, women, those who are already sick and susceptible to climate change. And our coverage was mainly Africa, South America, and Asia, but I have to confess very little in the regions surrounding Azerbaijan. And actually, if you like to take home message, we'd love to have more evidence from this region. So that's what we did. Again, these materials are published on our website. And I just want to give you one example only from that large amount of work. And this was from the Philippines, where the objective was to strengthen health systems in coastal municipalities, such subject to significant increase in flooding, other storm damage across the Philippines. And the workers there were focusing on creating more resilient health systems, and that of course included trying to, where possible, decarbonise the health system itself. And we heard this morning about the role of decarbonisation for SMEs, but it's also important for health systems. At the same time, of course, as maintaining the quality of health delivery. This is done from the Philippines, where essentially from the education point of view, and there are other perspectives, but for education, there were two major activities. There was education for health professionals to train them at how to respond to climate change and the issues for their day-to-day healthcare delivery. And secondly, the community. I can't actually see which photo is it, but the photo on the right is health professionals and the one on the left is the community, where very much part of this project was the project researchers going out to engage the community to hear about their issues and how they could be involved in the solutions. Because without involving the end user and other stakeholders, solutions probably won't work. And essentially, of course, given the mantra for this session that no one is left behind in the green economy transition, education is vitally important. And I'll finish just to mention that I'm a scientist. What worked in designing these case studies? How can we do better? How can we use those case studies? And essentially, just very finally, the bullets. We argue very much for a transdisciplinary approach, and I think other speakers may join me in that call. We need to integrate across disciplines and sectors, and that involves what we would call systems-based thinking within the planetary health framework. And I'd love to elaborate on that if there's time for discussion. The second point is that researchers often design and conduct the research without asking anyone else. It's vital to better involve the community involved in the design of research, in the conduct of the research, and the outputs of that research, and of course all that has implications for education. Particularly, as I mentioned, in vulnerable groups. One of the things that IAP is now doing from this and other ongoing work is essentially to bring together what we see as lessons of good practice in terms of doing the work and talking about the outputs, whether that's engaging with policymakers, engaging in practice at the community level. Again, all of that requires education and information, as does the need to share and upscale the conclusions more generally. And I think I'll stop here just to emphasise that academies of science across the world, including the Azerbaijan Academy, are very keen to continue work in this area, And just repeat my call that if you've got any great ideas, case studies for solutions, particularly in health or education, then let us know. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you very much for that. That's quite surprising when you learn from somebody, particularly to keep on time. We have the schedule to stick to, and he actually did it in 7 minutes and 48 seconds. Which was very, that way we can get together, recoup some of the time for the other panels, and allow for some time for Q&A. That's right. So now, if we don't mind, we'll go now with Nafis, from the British Council. She started into English, she started in education management, then into English and education management. Of course, we speak that language good. And she will be talking to us about the role of the international government organizations in education. And I think that was very good is how to get some experience and how to disseminate this how to. So thank you very much. Please.
Thank you very much.
Just remind everybody we have 8 minutes.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your kind presentation. Indeed, the British Council is an international organization that we're actually celebrating 90th anniversary this year, and we've been 31 years in Azerbaijan. And we're delighted that starting from Glasgow, COP26, we've been actively involved into the COPs. So we've been, of course, present ever since, and we're delighted that we have prepared quite an impressive agenda for this year as well. And we do believe that climate change, sustainability issues start from education. So that's why this is my favorite panel, not only because it gathered marvelous presenters, speakers, and moderator, which you are, but also because the change does start from education. I'm a strong believer in that. And I'm proud that British Council is the organization that's driving that change in the area of English language, in the area of education, culture, and arts, and through the various programs that we deliver internationally. So we operate in more than 120 countries of the world. We've reached out just over 1 year, over 600 million people. And climate change has been one of the active areas we've been working, especially through the Culture Connects program. That's a global program that we administer. And through that program, we've been working with skills development, capacity development of teachers, skills development of young people, youth, as well as schools and schools children. So when we talk about education, it's impossible to choose one niche. So it has to be at all pillars, at all levels, when climate change is being introduced, being piloted, disseminated, and supported. So we're talking about K-12, we're talking about vocational education, higher education. Big role in that does play research. So British Council commissioned in December 2023 research conducted by UCL, and Professor Welsh will be here during COP29, also presenting some of the results and conducting school simulation events in partnership with European Azerbaijan schools. So that research was focused primarily around schools and teacher professional development as well as children. So the research showed that all of this needs to be joined up. It's not separate niches that need to be developed, but it's rather when we develop skills, we develop capacity of teachers, that has to come in a package with developing leaders' potential of the schools, as well as, of course, involving youth ambassadors, involving school children, and working at all pillars of education. And of course, dissemination. Research, in the research process, the big part is dissemination. One thing is we conduct the valuable research, but then how do we use the recommendations? How do we use the advice that's being provided there? Well, British Council is lucky in that sense, because as I said, we work in more than 120 countries in the world. We have presence, so that helped us to connect internationally with various institutions, present the research, and establish networks that help to develop and implement recommendations. This year, we are particularly delighted that during COP29, we are working with the University of Exeter that will bring a special program via the oceans, via the earth, that's targeted exactly at what we're discussing. Building skills of young people, developing capacity of higher education institution representatives. Another project will be targeted for school children, and that's to develop capacity of young people to be empowered to talk about the area, to negotiate. So this will be a COP29 simulation event that will be launched during fall. Just to bring another example, when we're working with higher education institutions, that will be a great opportunity to showcase example of how we're partnering with, we have Representative Steve Davidson from the University of Cambridge, so we're in discussion with the university how we can present a proposal to the wider audience that will include higher education institutions, both from the UK and Azerbaijan. So this is in a nutshell about our work. I will elaborate more, but to summarize, definitely skills development is the area to look at, and we can never say there are too many stakeholders. The more involvement at all pillars there is, the more support we can get, the better it is. And education in the area of climate change and sustainability does play a key role. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Marquise. This is an impressive panel. 2 minutes and a half left. Wow. Unheard of. It means that we learn and engage in nothing display very growing. So thank you very much for that. And with that, I'll give the word now, with mine, to Stephen David, which is currently Deputy Director from Cambridge Siemens, if I understand correctly. And before joining this, he was head of public international partnership section, so he knows more about things, how to do the partnership. Partnerships, of course, are very important between government, institutions, government, education, part of that as well. Particularly, something that has been very underused, kinder to 12th grade. How to deal with that? So please.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to waste all of those minutes that we've saved up. So yes, I'm the Director of Strategy and the Deputy Director at Cambridge Zero, which cuts across the University of Cambridge in terms of climate change, so it covers research, education, what we do as an institution in terms of our own carbon reduction. And I'm also the Higher Education Lead for the Climate Champions team. I should point out, and it's always bad to start any kind of presentation pointing out your faults, but I should point out I'm not an education expert. However, there are a couple of things that give me confidence. The first of which is I'm here representing one of the great educational institutions in the world, Cambridge, and we're not afraid of having opinions on things. The second thing that gives me confidence is I actually come from a family of teachers. My dad's a teacher, my mum was a teacher, my brother was a teacher, my sister was a teacher, two of my aunts was a teacher, and my uncle was a teacher as well. So I'm hoping through some process of osmosis, I've somehow managed to learn from them and understand this very complex and fascinating sector. So anyway, I'll be quick. There are a couple of sort of key points that I want to emphasize before I'd like to talk a little bit about where there may be room for innovation in this space, which was part of the role of this session. So the first message, and it's been said already, and it's an obvious one, but it bears repeating. Education, particularly K-12, kindergarten to grade 12 education, is fundamental in building the capacity to address the climate challenge. And that means developing knowledge, developing understanding, skills, education. And the important thing to mention here is that education is the single strongest predictor of climate change awareness. The World Bank, in a recent report in 2024, showed that each year of education increases climate awareness by 9%. And that's based on data from 96 countries. And why is education critical? It enables understanding of the root causes and consequences of climate change. It can help shift behaviours and attitudes. It builds the knowledge and understanding and skills, which is what we've been looking at a lot today with SMEs. and it develops critical and evaluative skills to engage with new and emerging knowledge and thinking, and to really evaluate and challenge unsustainable economic and social models and ideologies. So the point here is this is not the preserve of scientists and technicians. We all need the foundations and the knowledge to make sustainable choices in our daily lives. So that's the first key message. I realise that at this rate I'm not going to get on to the second part, so maybe I'll just stick with that. The second is that education is a powerful but underutilised instrument for climate action. So channeling more climate funding to education could significantly boost climate mitigation and adaptation. In fact, education is massively overlooked in funding broadly. As fossil fuel subsidies reached a record high in 2023, the IMF confirmed that while 7% of global economic output was spent on government fossil fuel subsidies, only 4% of global economic output was spent on education. Effective foundational and high-quality climate education is one of the best investments for climate action. We need this to be recognised. And with climate finance, is going to be centre stage at COP29 in the context of the new collective quantified goal for climate finance, which is always a mouthful. What better opportunity do we have to recognise this and try and align that financial support? And then the third key message, and this is one that's been touched on briefly already, is that tackling climate change through education requires a multi and intersectoral collaboration across the education sector and across industry and across government. What do I mean by this? This means that we need to break out of our silos, whether in government or across the sector. This week, ICESCO are launching because it's the conference of education ministers that's taking place at the moment, and they're launching a green education policy framework, which has been co-written with Cambridge University Press and Assessment. Of course, I've mentioned that one there. This makes the case that interministerial collaboration is a key enabler of green education. The point here is that climate change is a very broad subject, and there is considerable overlap with different areas of policy in education and more broadly. So, for example, the cross-pollination of greening education with girls' education, digital education, and investing in teaching generates extensive benefits that resonate well beyond the classroom. And it fosters a holistic, this is the, like systems thinking, holistic is one of these words that's very important, but we mention a lot. But it fosters this holistic education approach where environmental awareness is intertwined with issues like gender, equity, technological advancement, and high-quality teaching. So we need to avoid putting our eggs all in one basket and having too narrow a focus in our education initiatives. Very, very quickly, where should we seek innovation? Firstly, speed. We need to move quickly. We don't have much time here, and unfortunately, existing cycles take years. So we need awarding bodies and government regulators to consider this, to consider whether the processes are fit and fast enough for purpose. There's a lot we need to achieve by 2030, and we really need to mobilise education towards that. We also need novel collaborations that appeal to learners. We know that there's going to be some key sectors that will be transformed by the climate challenge. And industry and educators need to work out, how they can enhance the appeal of these sectors to draw through the children and young people, and really to cultivate that interest early, because these young people will be making choices about their qualifications and their pathways. Dialogue, and this is one of the ones I'm quite passionate about. The education sector really needs to do more to be active in the climate discourse, and must speak with those outside the sector. In my role as the higher education lead for the Climate Champions team, I've been really struck by how little engagement there has been from the education sector in some of these conversations. And that's a real loss because it's not utilising education as a tool and a mechanism to support climate action. And therefore it's not represented in some of those policy discussions. And then I'll make this my last one. And it's about disaster risk strategies and skills for students and teachers. And this actually overlaps a bit with the health as well. Education isn't just a facilitator for climate action, but is directly impacted by climate change. Millions of young people face lost days of learning because of climate change, because of climate-related events. And where does that hit worse? That hits worse for low-income countries. And so unless that is somehow made up or addressed, it will negatively impact on future earnings, it will negatively impact on productivity, on fuel inequality, and on climate change itself. We can learn lessons, I suspect, from the pandemic in that respect. And I'm going to finish there.
Very good. Thank you very much. And now go to Haddad, who's also a colleague at our university, who's been doing very good research on urban management. So I'll leave it at that. It's just odd idea here. Thank you very much. We need a mic, please, because it should be red.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm representing AD University Institute for Development and Diplomacy. As Dr. Labadi said, I'm a research fellow at the university specialized in water resources management, and I'm proudly talking about how education and climate change are related with each other, because our university is also academic partner for COP29 this year. And actually, the role of youth and education was emphasized within the framework of COP very recently. But it's great to see how this topic is getting more and more attention. Because education, as we all agree, is key in climate change adaptation strategies, because it's not just only helping us to raise awareness, but it also helps us to generate new generation of professionals who are actually will be the solution makers or decision makers. So if you are looking at the role of education and climate change, we need to think about on this topic from different dimensions. Like if it has the role of public awareness, it has also the role of being an example, because imagine a university, an institution which is talking about the innovation and climate change and adaptation, but infrastructure-wise or activity-wise it doesn't get along with what it states. So in this regard, we also need to think how we can integrate the innovation in our education. For instance, COVID was good kind of opportunity for all institutions to integrate online working mode. This will also help us to reduce our impact on environment by commuting less. And maybe with this example, we can also think about maybe we can, as an educational institution, maybe we can provide some opportunity for remote learning as well. Additionally, as the climate change is, it got the importance like immediately, and the importance we recognize it gets increasing fastly. So we also need to think about education from the perspective not only formal education but informal education, capacity building opportunities. So as ABA University, I would like to share some of our activities, like what we are doing in this regard. So along with organizing a series of events for capacity building, We are also developing capacity building programs for different professionals. And we are working with journalists, NGOs, municipalities, some people from technical field in this, like we are cooperating with UNDP with the National Aviation Project, support to Azerbaijan building its national aviation. So while working with these people, we realized that there is a gap in the population, like if they are working in the municipality, for instance, they are thinking what the climate change has to do with my work in arranging my activities, or if we are talking about with some other experts from technical fields, they have some challenges in understanding, or maybe there is some NGOs that are doing social activities, and they think climate change is more about environment, but it has nothing to do with social activities or education. So why are we here? And this type of activities, trainings, meetings are also addressing these questions and ensuring that everybody is involved, everybody understands its role in a better way. Another example for how innovation and like how this topic can be integrated in education can be discussed from the formal education perspective, but here we have some challenges in terms of adapting new courses smoothly to our programs. As we all know, the programs of studies of the some programs like are already filled, and you need to go through some bureaucratic steps in order to make some adjustments. So the solutions can be using elective courses to address the kind of barriers in terms of integrating climate change related courses in the capacity building, and also providing some trainings like that are out of their curriculum, regular program study, and they can take part in these courses as well. So, thank you so much.
Frankly, I must commend everybody for the timing. We're doing very well. So now we have lots of time for Q&A. So I believe we have a roving microphone. Very good. In that case, if anybody wants to ask a question, please raise your hand and the microphone will approach you. In the meantime, I will take advantage of this microphone and maybe put some questions in it. Several of you have been saying that we need to change curriculum, essentially. We need to make people aware, young and not so young. And so, what would be this when AI is very much in front of us? When 66% of future professions by 2050 do not exist today? How can we adapt that curriculum in order to satisfy the future needs of the people, plus water, energy, and everything else? You felt
it's a really interesting question, and that goes far beyond climate change. A good university education is not necessarily just about providing knowledge and skills. It's about providing the grounding and education that allow you to understand problems that you don't know exist yet. And I think it's exactly the same with climate change. We have some idea of the direction we're going, and we can prepare for some of that. But it's about the critical reasoning. It's that evaluation skills that I was talking about. And I think a lot of that, even though I'm no AI expert, is developing at the rate of knots. I think that there is still a very strong role which cannot be given to AI, which is about critical reasoning. And that's an important part of education.
Please,
Could I just add to that? One of the problems that facing this area, and indeed health more broadly, is the amount of false information on social media and other sources. And actually the scientific community is often not very good at engaging in the social media to counteract those false misinformation or disinformation. So I think part of what we should be focusing on, it indeed is to develop the evaluative skills in young people to be able to think about the robustness of the evidence they see on social media or from other sources, to be able to make up their own minds on the basis of what they hear, rather than more naively following the latest fashion in social media. But it is a big issue for us, and obviously it's likely to grow with the advent of AI.
Thank you very much. Any question? So I'll continue with this group. Oh, please.
If I may also comment, I think as we are discussing skills, I think it's essential. I think British Council is also having a great program on 21st century skills, and we started with school children, and I think that the skills development is essential. So even using AI properly requires a certain set of skills. So I think the urge and the need for developing skills will never cease. It doesn't matter how far AI goes into. Still, I think the skills and as Stephen rightly mentioned, the critical thinking, the understanding of things, the being able to analyze things will remain with humans. And British Council has had the research recently on AI. Definitely it's a tool, but it's not the goal, and it's not the ability to develop skills. It's rather a tool that would help to improve the processes. So likewise on climate change, I think the essential is the skills development, so that will remain, and that's why our panel is dedicated exactly to skills. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abhijit. On that note of skills, we've heard very much now about education. And the one thing that everybody believes or thinks is that education is school. And I think to do. For me, schooling is illustration about education. Education comes from the family. If that is the case, then we do not need the school, but to get to the parents in order so when the children are just crawling, they're fully aware of the whole issue. And therefore, are we using the schools to get to the homes? Or are we forgetting the homes at all? What is education in that sense? Anybody wants to view?
Actually, very interesting approach to the education process. I absolutely agree with you, because family and schooling comes hand in hand. So without family support, whatever is taught in the schools will not be fully accepted. Imagine a family who is not taking seriously, for instance, saving water or saving electricity, then whatever is discussed in the schools will stay in the air. So in this regard, when we talk about education, we are not talking about formal education in the schools or high schools like universities, but we also talk about like education as a whole process. Also, it can be the advertisement in the TVs, or it can be some short commercials or cartoons on YouTube. So everything needs to be integrated and like addressing different age categories, different mindset, in order to ensure that we are all on the same page.
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. It's interesting, well, education provides a useful grounding already. So you say about the role that children have in sort of persuading their parents or influencing their parents. That's well known. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that increasing education increases the impact of those kind of climate awareness at the adult level. And the other thing I want to touch about, when we're talking about other forms of education, there's the informal sector, and I'm thinking about museums and those kind of bodies. They have a really important role to play in this, and a lot of them are very actively involved in these discussions, working with universities and schools and together to create shared projects. And then you also have a lot of universities have continuing education. And And that's accepting, as you say, education doesn't stop, because the world doesn't stop. The world is constantly changing. We're talking about AI. So learning has to keep going. It has to keep happening. And so these continuing education institutions are set up for that. And climate is a real challenge for them as well, because you're talking about a very different audience, some of which are retired or in different, their second roles or jobs or careers. And so there's a certain amount of kind of specialism that's required to address those audiences.
Very good. Robin, I think you want to explain.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I mean, your point about fans is a good one, and there is an analogy, of course, with health, again, that you often have to treat the patient, the parents, in order to treat the child. In terms of the issues, how the parents modify the environment through intervention in the home, I think it is the case in a lot of countries that younger people are more interested, more active in climate change transformation than the older generation, not like myself. Hopefully then as the young people themselves become parents, the correction will become embedded in the system. But indeed, many of the older generation are resistant to transformative change, and we really don't understand how big the changes are going to be. So I think the younger generation is more active, is more hopeful. The issue is that, perhaps this is one for schools and others, is that we don't scare them. There is a climate anxiety as a health condition. But everything's so bad, we don't know what to do about it, we can't cope. So we need to teach and inform about hope and solutions rather than about the end of the world.
Very good. Thank you very much. I just want to add one thing, and that is the fact that we all hear about education, awareness, reality, climate change is here, it's over, it's even time to for me though. But I've always asked, how do we make that reality? What can we do today, us, individually? And that is something that we normally get lost about. So, I know yesterday I put a challenge to several people. They came to, we can put one of these bottles, 1 liter, in the toilet. And every time we flush the toilet, we're going to say 1 liter. And if it's 100 people today here, every year we are going to say 150,000 liters. That, I think, brings everything into practical place, which we all know. So anyway, thank you very much for everybody. Once again, thanks for the presence, thanks to all the panelists, the discussion floor, and thank you very much. We go on to the next panel. Thank you.